Comrades, I'm here to tell you that the Canadian people are an endangered species. They are more endangered than the rarest shark, the rarest jellyfish, the rarest amoeba in the ocean. The Canadian people are an endangered species. Now, why is this so? And I say endangered both economically and culturally. Number one, it's our politicians. Our politicians have contributed greatly to this, but it's also English Canadians as well. I will get into that. Let me talk about our politicians. And it's not just politicians on the left, it's politicians on the right as well. Politicians like Justin the Tacky and MacDaddy Trudeau, politicians like Andrew Scheer, politicians like Maxime Bernier, and even politicians like Stephen Harper have all contributed in the destruction of the Canadian people and which have landed them in the endangered species list, which I have put them in. But it's not just the current politicians. We can talk about politicians like Brian Mulroney, who poorly negotiated NAFTA, Pierre Trudeau. You know, we don't have politicians like Wilfrid Laurier anymore, who were real Canadian nationalists. They don't exist anymore. Or W.A.C. Bennett or William Aberhart or even the Manning family. They're gone. We have politicians who will sell this country out for a quick buck and or votes. Let me start with Justin the Tacky and MacDaddy Trudeau. This individual, this son of Satan, I've told you this from the beginning. He has pimped this nation out. He has pimped this nation out to every single country, to every single individual out there beyond our borders. Pimped this nation out. He has even pimped this nation out to the United States, the Yankees, Donald Trump. You know, this USMCA deal, which is another poorly negotiated trade deal, I'll even say it. The Canadian economy is not Canadian. It is run by foreign monopoly capital. The USMCA will just reinforce that. And Justin the Tacky and MacDaddy Trudeau made sure that that happened. So he has even pimped this nation out to Donald Trump, people many Canadians say they don't like. Personally, I like him because he's an American nationalist, a patriot, and I respect any leader which is a nationalist or a patriot. But he has sold this nation out to almost every single nation on the planet, completely, and he has used our wealth, our resources to do that. Meanwhile, he has done everything he can to impoverish Canadians, natives who live with poisonous water, young people who are burdened with not only student debt, but interest, and large interest at that on their student debt, which they are forced to pay, and if they don't pay it on time, literally gets taken out of their bank account, and they're forced to live with very little food and very little water, impoverishing Canadians when it comes to higher taxes and new taxes like the carbon tax, which is designed to help the environment, but will actually make the environment worse, impoverishing Canadians and making them more reliant and dependent on the federal government, but using our resources that could enrich Canadians, which could make Canada the hallmark of the world, using that to help the foreign nations of the world, which could fix themselves if they had leaders who had superior logic. But that's Justin the Tacky and MacDaddy Trudeau. And it's even his father, too. The whole Trudeau family, they're in the business of selling out this country federally and provincially because we have a federal country. We're not a unitary nation like France or the Netherlands or Italy or those places, which the only government with true power is in the capital city. We have provinces. And so provincial nationalism is just as important. Pierre Trudeau did everything he could. He started the fire on the Canadian people. He lit the fire in the Canadian household. But he also did everything he could to destroy Quebec nationalism, something which I have said many times I admire. I admire Quebec nationalism. I admire it 100%. And he did everything he could to destroy it. But the Quebecers fought back, whether it was with independence referendums, and that's the referendums which basically say, look, if you burn this country down, if you burn this house down, we will leave this useless house. We will leave this useless country. If you're trying to burn this down, we will leave and we'll make our own country, and we will protect our culture, and we will protect our language, and we'll protect our identity. Something the Quebecers are known to do, and I respect them for it. I respect them for it. And that's why I love the Quebecer. And the English Canadian doesn't do this. I will talk about the English Canadian. And by the way, they're the second reason why the Canadian people are going extinct. Not the French Canadian, the English Canadian. Yes, the French Canadian did elect Justin Ateki and Macdaddy Trudeau. They contributed to him being in office. But the Trudeau family is an enemy of Quebec. It is an enemy of their forefathers and their fathers. They did everything they could to destroy Quebec nationalism. And don't tell me anything bad about René Lévesque. He was a great man. I would have voted for him if I was around back in those days. He was the one who led the fight of Quebec nationalism, preserving their identity. I respect those like Bourassa who brought in the language laws to protect Quebec languages, something the English Canadian would never do. English is pretty much going extinct in the rest of Canada, the GTA. It's pretty much extinct in Markham. Markham is a Mandarin Chinese territory. Brampton is a territory of India. Markham is not a Canadian territory. In fact, I'm expecting people to be checked by Chinese immigration officials when they enter Markham. Not saying that I hate Chinese or anything like that, but we have allowed other people and other cultures to come in and instead of assimilating like Americans say that they should do and Quebecers do, the English Canadian says you can come here and you can bring a piece of your nation with you. So they come and they bring a piece of their nation with them. It started with the Trudeaus. It has continued. And as a result, we have many parts of Canada, large parts, which really you couldn't say are Canadian. Because, I mean, when you go to a foreign country, you usually have a hard time being understood by the locals. Well, Canadians have a hard time being understood in places like Markham in their own country. I went to a store the other day, and the lady, I asked, where's the toothpaste? The lady didn't know what I was talking about. She thought I had two heads on me. And she's also looking at me like as if I'm going to steal something in her store. Like I wanted to steal anything from her filthy, dirty store with flies running around. But anyway, let's get back to the politicians who are responsible. Maxime Bernier. I know a lot of you all love him. And I've told the truth on him. Many of you chose to listen, and some of you idiots don't. But I'm your general. I don't give a damn what you think. I don't give a damn what you like. I'm your general. Arana Nation is your general, is your commander-in-chief, and he's going to tell you things that you don't like, but which are good for the preservation of our people, of our nation, and if needs be, our province, if we have to leave Canada. Maxime Bernier is an economic globalist on a massive scale. Now, I've said that the Canadian economy is not run by Canadians. But there is one sector of the Canadian economy, there is one industry which is still run by Canadians, and that's the farming industry, and more specifically, the dairy industry. Now, I'm against supply. Well, let's put it this way. I think supply management needs to be fixed, but it should not be destroyed, because destroying it means war on our Canadian industry. And a lot of Maxime Bernier supporters tell me, as if this is supposed to matter when it comes to someone like Arana Nation, who is a complete nationalist. And they have the gall to tell me you shouldn't vote for Andrew Scheer because he's in the pocket of the Canadian dairy cabal. Well, I tell them this, and I always tell them this. I would rather have and I'm not endorsing Andrew Scheer. I'm not endorsing anybody this year. I'll vote, but I'm hoping for a minority government. But I would rather have a prime minister who is in the pocket of the Canadian dairy cabal than a prime minister who is in the pocket of foreign monopoly capital, which is what Maxime Bernier is. And Maxime Bernier would finish the job of the destruction of the Canadian economy and would forever and completely have the Canadian economy controlled by foreign monopoly capital. Now, our energy industry, our retail industry, our engineering industry, all of it is run by foreigners, foreign companies, foreign monopoly capital, globalist monopoly capital. It's all run by them. Canada doesn't have an economy of its own. We still have our farming industry, which I have said is the most important industry. This is the industry which decides whether or not Canadian men, women, and children, boys and girls, grandmothers and great grandmothers and grandfathers go to bed hungry or not. Are we really saying that we will allow someone like Maxime Bernier to come in and now all of a sudden say that our dairy industry is now in the control of foreigners and they're going to determine now whether or not we drink milk or not? Or they're going to decide whether or not we eat or not? Because if you destroy the dairy industry, if he does that, he will do the same to the farming industry. Because he is somebody who will sell out the nation for a quick buck. He says it's cheaper. It's cheaper. Ending supply management is cheaper. Well, it may be cheaper in the short run, but you're selling out your country, you're selling out a very important industry, and you're also getting rid of a lot of jobs, which in the end won't matter if it's cheaper or not because there won't be people working. And if they are working, they're really only working for foreign monopoly capital, which doesn't give a damn about them and which will throw them on the street in 2 seconds if they do not comply with every single thing that's demanded of them. Now, that's not right. This is my country here, and I'm not going to let Maxime Bernier or anyone come here and try to complete the destruction of our Canadian economy. And I say the same thing for Justin Pataki and Mac Daddy Trudeau when it comes to cultural destruction. Now, let me say again, I love everybody of every race, of every color, nationality to come to this nation. If you choose to assimilate, and I call it a melting pot, I strongly love the word melting pot. If you are willing to come into the melting pot, come here, just like my family did. My family is more Canadian than most Canadians. We don't have any cultural things that we demand of Canada or that we impose on Canada. We have come here and we live just as Canadian, if not more Canadian, than the actual Canadians. You do that. But we must not allow our communities, we must not allow ourselves, and we must not allow our economy to be run by the outside world. Because if we continue down the path, we will be extinct, fully extinct, really extinct, like the dodo. Now, the Quebecer is not going to be extinct. Because as I say, the Quebecer is a proud individual. The Quebecer will do everything. He will fight tooth and nail for his language. No one is going to destroy the Quebec language, the French language in Quebec. The English language is on its last legs in Canada, especially in Toronto, especially in the suburbs, where you have rich foreigners who come who don't know the language. And I say that people who come to this nation should know either English or French. They don't know the language, and the community is completely transformed. That wouldn't happen in Quebec. No way, no how. But the English Canadian allows it to happen because they don't have honor. And the politicians also do the same thing. So right now, we don't have a good politician to choose from. The only one who I would say is Stephen Garvey. But he's not going to win because he doesn't have enough people. So I say if you don't have a person in your district who is running on the NCA platform, if you do, vote for NCA. But if you don't, vote for the party which is more likely to beat the Liberals. Because the Liberals are the true ones who are really responsible for destroying Canada economically and culturally. At least the PPC leader, Maxime Bernier, used to be a Quebec nationalist. So I will give him that. So even he's not as bad. At least Andrew Scheer is in the hands of the Canadian dairy industry. So I'll give him that. NDP, their heart is in the right place, but they're too naive. And the Greens, I don't know what planet they're on. So vote for the party most likely to destroy the liberals.